Daenerys stood at the edge of Dragonstone's windswept battlements, her silver hair tangling in the salt-stained breeze off the narrow sea. The stone beneath her bare feet felt cool and implacable, a reminder of ancient Targaryen glories that once spread across continents. Yet, for all the majesty in her lineage, her heart was heavy with the burdens of the present. Far below, waves crashed against the rocks in an endless tumult. It was a sound both soothing and ominous, the thrum of a world that did not care for kings or queens, or who sat upon the Iron Throne. Sometimes, she wondered if the sea was the only truly impartial force in all of Westeros. She let the briny wind wash over her face and held onto a sliver of hope that her quest for a just rule would prevail. Long ago, in Essos, she had felt destiny stirring. The dragons had been born in flame and blood, forging her into the woman she had become. She had freed slaves, won battles, and stared down tyrants. Yet here, in Westeros, the fight had taken on new shapes. The Lannisters clung to power in King's Landing with their lion's claws dug deep into every corner of the realm's economy, forging uneasy alliances and paying off old debts. The entire realm's finances seemed to revolve around them and the Iron Bank's unwavering support. If the Iron Bank was the wealth, the Lannisters were the favored collectors of that wealth, an unholy union that sustained the throne she sought to seize. Tyrion approached her from behind, his short stature making barely a whisper on the ancient stones. She knew his footsteps, though, and did not turn around. She sensed him looking out over the waters as well, his mind always on the next stratagem. There was no better strategist for matters of money and power than Tyrion Lannister, once her enemy's own kin, now her most trusted advisor. The irony was not lost on her. "We could attempt a more diplomatic route," he said quietly, folding his hands and resting them on the parapet. "Braavos is a city of commerce and contract. They respect cunning and subtlety more than brute force. If you come at them with armies, they will close ranks, and that famous Titan of Braavos will appear more than a statue to ward off ships." Nin. She glanced sideways at him, noticing the flicker of worry and the lines that formed between his brows. "Diplomacy is all well and good," she said, her voice low so it would not carry to any curious ears. "Yet the Iron Bank has financed Cersei's wars. Braavos' wealth flows to King's Landing. We starve while they feast. My men are fed and paid with the spoils of conquered slavers and the generosity of those who believe in my cause. But it is not enough to match the gold that underwrites the Lannister might." "Vinay." Tyrion sighed and dipped his head in acknowledgement. "I know too well how quickly the gold can grease the wheels of power. My sister understands it better than most. She would sell her soul to ensure the coin never runs dry." Daenerys closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered the times in Meereen, the cunning manipulations of the wealthy masters, the constant attempts to undermine her rule by controlling the city's purse strings. It had forced her to be more severe than she ever intended. Without coin, armies starved and alliances collapsed. Without coin, even the love of her freed people struggled against the tyranny of empty bellies. She had learned that good intentions and high ideals alone would not suffice to rule. She needed the tangible resources that only gold could provide. "I do not wish to become a thief," she whispered, opening her eyes to the wide horizon. "But if the Iron Bank insists on providing my enemies with the means to destroy me, I must act." Tyrion's voice softened. "Taking the Iron Bank, seizing its vaults, it's unprecedented. Even the mightiest kings have not challenged Braavos in such a direct manner. Stannis Baratheon tried to negotiate with them, but never dared attempt to steal from them. The Iron Bank is known for having the longest memory in the world, and for ensuring that debts are always paid. If you do this, you risk making an enemy of nearly every merchant and lord who depends on the bank's goodwill." "Bandy." Daenerys turned to face him fully. The wind picked up a strand of her hair and whipped it across her cheek, but she tucked it away and fixed her violet eyes on him. "Let me remind you of something. My father was undone not just by his own madness, but by the slow poison of alliances that turned on him when the gold shifted. Robert Baratheon won the throne not merely by steel, but by the wealth he could raise. Even after his victory, the Iron Bank turned to the next in line, The next one who promised them safe investment. Do you see any loyalty in gold? Tyrion was silent. He had seen it all. Kingdoms turning on the exchange of coins. Fortunes reversed with a single parchment of contract. No, your grace. Gold holds loyalty only to those who can keep it flowing. Daenerys nodded, a subtle smile on her lips as she turned back to watch the darkening waters. Then perhaps if I hold it, I hold the key to forging the new wheel. And if I starve the Lannisters of their means, I take that throne from under them before I even march. Is that not the most cunning approach? He stood a moment, gazing at her profile, and finally nodded. Then we must plot it carefully. Diplomacy and cunning will be your shield, not just Drogon's flames. He hesitated, then added, one misstep, and we awaken 100 sleeping beasts in Essos, all wanting a piece of that wealth. She placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the tension there. I trust you to help me find a path that is both just and strong. Her gaze darted across the courtyard below, where Unsullied patrolled in flawless discipline, and where the sleek silhouette of Rhaegal soared above the towers. I have no desire to burn Braavos or see it crumble under my dragons, but I will do what I must to ensure that all 7 kingdoms, all the people under my care, can prosper without the tyranny of Lannister debt. When she left the battlements, the wind still ghosted over her shoulders like a cold reminder of how precarious her ambitions were. She went inside, footsteps echoing in the torchlit corridors, mind alive with possibilities, consequences, and a glimmer of hope. That evening, in the great hall where the map of Westeros was carved on the stone table, she gathered her closest advisors. Varys lingered in a corner, silent and watchful, his spider's eyes observing every subtlety. Missandei stood near Daenerys' side, ready to offer counsel or comfort with her calm presence. Grey Worm in his polished armor remained by the arch, ever vigilant, though he listened keenly to every word. Daenerys had called them all there to hear Tyrion's plan. The sum of nights spent scribbling on parchments, forging a scheme that might do what armies never had: topple the economic foundation that propped the Lannisters upon the Iron Throne. Tyrion paced around the table, a strange excitement in his voice. The Iron Bank of Braavos deals in coin, but also in influence. One does not simply walk into the vaults, but a generous endowment, a pledge of future returns that outshine what the Lannisters provide, and a demonstration of force that Braavos cannot ignore, might open the doors. My suggestion is to send an envoy ahead, someone who can speak with the Braavosi in their language, someone they trust. Hon? He glanced at Missandei. She returned the look, inclining her head. I have been a translator for slavers, she said. I can speak many tongues, and I know how to weigh words carefully, but will that suffice? The Braavosi do not simply open their coffers for polite conversation. Tyrion rubbed his chin, pausing by the carved stone representation of the Vale. Our envoy will request a formal meeting with the bank's directors. We will promise them the same interest rate the Lannisters offered, plus half again as much. We will vow not to threaten their city. Daenerys already possesses a certain mystique in Essos, the breaker of chains, the mother of dragons, the Khaleesi who ended slavery in several cities. For Braavos, which was founded by slaves who broke free of Valyrian rule, that is not a trivial detail. We can use their old resentments against them, paint the Lannisters as the new tyrants who keep the common folk shackled in debt. This angle might make them more receptive. Varys spoke at last, his voice smoother than the rippling tide. We must also consider the faceless men. Braavos is a city of many hidden powers. If they suspect we plan to rob the Iron Bank, they will move against us in ways we cannot anticipate. A direct assault would be unwise, to say the least. Daenerys folded her hands on the table. Her expression was grave, but determined. I intend neither to bribe the Braavosi, nor to throw them into chaos. But I will not see the gold that should fund the rebuilding of the 7 kingdoms used to kill my people. If the Iron Bank insists on siding with the Lannisters, I will make them yield. That does not mean we bring dragons to burn the city, but a show of force might be needed. Daenerys, Grey Worm spoke, voice measured and resolute. The Unsullied can accompany you, my queen. but we cannot bring too many. Braavos has watchful eyes. If they see an army amassing on the horizon, they will shut their doors and fortify. We might never cross the canals. She considered his words. We take a small force, enough to protect ourselves if negotiations go sour, but not so many that we appear to be invaders. Drogon and my other dragons could remain at a distance, near enough to be called upon if I have need. A hush fell over the group as they each envisioned the plan. It was a tightrope walk. They would approach Braavos partly in good faith, partly with intimidation. One miscalculation could cost them everything. Tyrion broke the silence. Time is crucial. The longer we wait, the more the Lannisters will muster forces, hire sellswords, and fortify King's Landing. We cannot let them continue receiving shipments of gold without end. If we strike at the source. Daenerys completed his thought. Then we starve the lion. We turn it into prey, not predator. They spent hours refining details, mapping out the arrival by ship, the approach to the Titan, the well-rehearsed speeches Missandei would deliver to the Magisters of Braavos. Tyrion would handle the financial negotiations, enumerating potential trade benefits should Braavos cast its lot with the Dragon Queen. Varys would watch for underhanded moves, and Grey Worm would protect them all if swords were drawn. After the formalities, they would request a private tour of the Iron Bank vaults, a show of trust on the part of Braavos if they were truly open to forging a new alliance. And at that critical moment, Daenerys' small but deadly infiltration force would ensure that the Braavosi had no choice but to relinquish control. She would not kill or pillage unnecessarily, but the threat must remain as clear as dragonfire. When the meeting concluded, Daenerys found herself alone again in her chamber, sitting on the window ledge, gazing at the moon's reflection in the black waters below. She wondered if she was turning into the very thing she despised, a conqueror who took by force what she could not gain through peace. But she remembered the pain of the enslaved, the destruction left behind by the Lannisters, the cruelty that had reigned for so many years in Westeros. She was not here to be an onlooker to injustice. If seizing the Iron Bank was what it took to topple the Lannisters and end their tyranny, so be it. She tried to imagine how future bards might sing of this. She hoped they would say she had done it for the people, not for selfish ambition. But the lines between necessity and ambition sometimes blurred. In the days that followed, preparations began in earnest. The docks of Dragonstone, once forlorn, bustled with black-sailed ships, being readied for a journey north and east across the sea. Supplies were loaded with utmost care. The unsullied chosen for the mission were among the best. They moved with mechanical precision, their pale tunics glinting in the morning light. Daenerys felt a tightness in her chest every time she saw them. She valued their loyalty more than she could express, and she refused to lead them to slaughter. Hence, the plan needed to be delicate. If all went well, bloodshed would be minimal, or even absent. Early one morning, Missandei stood at the prow of Daenerys' flagship, studying the horizon. The gentle swirl of the sea reminded her of her childhood on Neath, though the memories were bittersweet. Daenerys approached her, placing a hand on her shoulder. The quiet that passed between them was one of shared understanding. They had both been slaves once, sold and used in ways that made them vow never to let another taste those chains, if they could help it. "We do this for those who have no voice," Daenerys said softly, eyes tracing the dark ridges of the far shore. "To ensure gold does not become the master of kings." Missandei smiled, an expression of faith in the queen she followed. "I believe in you, Daenerys Stormborn. The people know you fight for them." "No." Daenerys returned the smile, grateful for that unwavering support. And they watched the restless water together, letting the wind tug at their cloaks. The flotilla set sail under a sky strewn with early morning clouds. The sun's first rays dipped across the wave crests, painting them in pale gold. It was an omen of sorts, perhaps a reflection of the wealth they sought to claim, or maybe a subtle warning of how fleeting wealth could be. Daenerys' heart pounded in her chest as she thought of the path that lay ahead. She had never been one for half measures. Her life had been shaped by extremes: fire and blood, freedom and chains. This was yet another crossroad. She stood on the deck, feeling the ship surge beneath her. Ser Jorah had once told her that a true queen must make her own destiny. Now, she was forging that destiny on the seas, with Braavos her next crucial stepping stone. Tyrion spent the voyage hunched over crates turned into makeshift desks, scribbling with quill and ink, practicing the lines he would deliver to the Magisters. He would rehearse with Missandei, perfecting the blend of financial acumen and subtle flattery. Sometimes, he would mutter about the risk of angering the faceless men, or about how the Braavosi might decide to side with Cersei after all. But each time, Daenerys would remind him of why they embarked on this course. The Lannisters had to be stopped at the root of their power, and in all the known world, no bank had deeper roots than the Iron Bank of Braavos. On the final day of the voyage, the Titan of Braavos emerged from a hazy mist like some ancient sentinel, towering over the mouth of the lagoon. Carved from dark stone, it stood astride the entrance, its massive legs anchored in the water. The figure's stern face and raised sword were said to frighten off enemies, but also to welcome honest merchants. Daenerys had heard tales of this colossal sculpture since she was a child, and yet seeing it in person awoke a sense of awe. She could not let wonder overshadow her mission, however, so she squared her shoulders. The wind carried the scents of foreign spices and the brine of Braavosi canals. Their ships slowed, sails fluttering. Braavosi pilot boats guided them in. The city came into view in stages, slender towers, domed temples, labyrinthine waterways. The architecture was proud and ethereal, a place shaped by a history of valiant slaves who fled Valyria and built a free city upon the watery shoals. At the far end of the Grand Canal rose the Iron Bank itself, an imposing edifice of dark granite and gilded statues, rumored to contain vaults that stretched deeper than the foundations of the city. Here, beyond the watchful eyes of Westeros, the fates of kingdoms were decided in quiet rooms with the scratch of quills on parchment, all sealed with wax and gold. Daenerys disembarked first, with Grey Worm and a dozen Unsullied stepping onto the wide stone dock. Missandei and Tyrion followed, each dressed in attire that spoke of wealth but not opulence, a deliberate choice to show respect without flaunting extravagance. Braavosi officials greeted them with polite bows, though their eyes darted between Daenerys and her formidable guards. She noticed the watchers perched along the dock, men with crossbows, no doubt a precaution. This city did not trust easily, especially not a woman who had conquered much of Slaver's Bay. They were led through winding streets, across small bridges arching over calm canals. At every turn, Daenerys glimpsed boatmen and merchants, courtesans and street performers, all weaving a tapestry of city life that was both joyous and guarded. Braavos was a place of contrasts, freedom and secrecy, art and death. The wind off the canals carried an undercurrent of tension that set Daenerys' nerves on edge. She was aware of eyes following her every move, invisible watchers in windows, children scurrying underfoot, perhaps as spies. Varys was right. The city had many hidden powers. At last, they approached the Iron Bank. Tall columns framed the entrance, each column carved with the sigils of various Braavosi families, including sea monsters and stylized ships. A large door of black iron opened into a vast marble hall, illuminated by high windows. The floors were polished to a gleam, reflecting the ornate chandeliers overhead. Clerks moved in practiced efficiency, their footsteps echoing like a constant heartbeat of commerce. The smell of ink and parchment hung in the air, a subtle reminder that more battles were fought here with ledgers than with swords. A tall, thin man with skin, the color of polished mahogany, greeted them. He wore a fine robe of dark blue, trimmed in gold threads. His face was expressionless, but his eyes flicked to Daenerys' hair, and then to Grey Worm spears. "I am Qoran Mar, a representative of the Iron Bank. We have been expecting you, Daenerys Targaryen." His common tongue was fluent, though tinged with the lilt of Braavos. Daenerys inclined her head. "An honor to be here, Qoran Mar. I appreciate the courtesy shown by the bank in granting an audience." He gestured toward a side corridor. "The directors will meet with you shortly. In the meantime, we have prepared a salon where you may refresh yourselves." She let Tyrion speak next, as per their plan. "We are grateful for Braavos' hospitality," Tyrion said, bowing with a grace that concealed his inner tension. We trust that these talks will be of great mutual benefit. Coran Mar offered a hint of a smile. May it be so. If you would follow me? They were led through high-ceilinged corridors lined with tapestries depicting the liberation of Bravos from Valyria. Nisande cast her gaze over scenes of chained slaves rising up, forging the ships that carried them to freedom. She quietly pointed out details to Daenerys. The early Bravosi had been bold and cunning, turning adversity into a foundation of power and commerce that spanned continents. It was not lost on Daenerys how that mirrored her own life story in some ways. In a comfortable salon draped in rich velvet, Coran Mara left them with an offer of Bravosi wine and sweet biscuits. The moment he stepped out, Grey Worm and the Unsullied took positions at the door, while Tyrion exhaled sharply. "I've never been so aware of how vulnerable we are," he said under his breath, moving to a window that overlooked a courtyard. "You can bet they've placed archers and hidden guards. We're inside their stronghold, for all intents and purposes." "And the man?" Daenerys sipped from a goblet of the offered wine. It was fragrant, laced with a subtle spice that she found pleasing on her tongue. "We came here to talk first," she said, fixing her eyes on him. "We will not draw steel unless forced." Nisande leaned against the side of a carved wooden chair. "But we must be prepared. How quickly can we call upon the infiltration force if we need them?" Tyrion rubbed the bridge of his nose, calculating. "They will be waiting aboard the ships, disguised as sailors. A signal should be enough. If we release a flare from the window, perhaps. But crossing half the city to get here will take time, even if we bribe boatmen to speed us through the canals." "Negan?" Daenerys nodded, her face calm, though her heart drummed. Let us hope it doesn't come to that. Yet she remembered the plan. The best time to strike would be once they were invited deeper into the bank's secure chambers. That invitation might come if negotiations seemed promising, or if Tyrion masterfully appealed to the Bravosi's sense of profit. Minutes later, Coran Mar returned, leading them to the director's chamber. It was an imposing room, with a vast oval table of dark wood. Candles glowed in silver candelabras, and behind the directors hung tapestries woven with threads of gold, each tapestry displaying facets of the bank's storied history. At the far end, beneath an ornate arch, sat 3 directors: an older woman with hair wound in a braided crown, a middle-aged man with a sharp beard, and a younger, stern-faced woman whose eyes suggested cunning beyond her years. The older woman motioned for them to approach. "Daenerys Targaryen, we have heard much of your exploits across the sea. Breaker of chains, mother of dragons. We welcome you to the Iron Bank." Her voice was warm, but formal. "I'm Belina Fasro, and these are my fellow directors, Silos Nar and Amara Zen. We trust you bring us a proposition." Daenerys inclined her head in respect. "I come not only to propose an alliance, but to remind you that times are changing in Westeros. The Lannisters have long had your favor, but they do not have the hearts of the people." Silos Nar, the bearded director, leaned forward. "The Iron Bank does not invest in hearts or sentiments. We invest in returns, in gold, repaid with interest. If your cause has merit, the bank might consider shifting its attentions." Tyrion's chance arrived. He stepped into the conversation with the poise of an experienced courtier. "Indeed, our queen has garnered much support in Essos. She has many allies in the Free Cities, and her dragons. Well, let us say they are not just legends. The potential for trade between a Targaryen-led Westeros and Bravos is enormous. If the Iron Bank were to extend its resources to Daenerys Targaryen, you would see returns that far surpass what the Lannisters currently provide, and your investment would be secured by the broad support of the people, ensuring stability for generations." Amara Zen, the youngest director, sat with her arms crossed. She had keen, dark eyes, and yet the Lannisters have always paid their debts. Their house words, "Hear me roar," is overshadowed by the more famous motto about always repaying what they owe. Why should we risk an established relationship for the uncertain fortunes of a Targaryen? "Damnapine." Tyrion smiled, though Daenerys sensed the tension in the room. "I know the Lannisters well," he said, voice as smooth as silk. "Though I was born one, I understand their precarious position. Their coffers are not as deep as they appear. The crown's debts have risen over time, wars have cost more than they anticipated, and the gold mines in the Westerlands run poorer each year. If the Iron Bank continues to fund them, you may well be throwing good gold after bad. But if you back Daenerys Targaryen, you position yourselves at the vanguard of a new age. Then, a flicker in the director's expressions told Daenerys that the words had hit a nerve. She felt a cautious surge of satisfaction. Tyrion knew precisely which strings to tug. Belina Fasro exchanged a glance with her colleagues. "You speak persuasively, Lord Tyrion. We have heard rumors about the gold mines, but rumors are not fact." Missandei spoke up, her voice calm and measured. "The rumors come from dwarven miners who once worked those mines, from traveling merchants who have seen the scarcity of gold ore with their own eyes. The Crown's attempts to hide this information are extensive, but cracks in their facade are evident. It is only a matter of time before the Lannisters default. When that happens, the Iron Bank might find itself in a difficult situation, having extended further credit to a failing monarch." A hush fell. Daenerys watched the directors' faces closely, noting that Belina Fasro's left hand was clenched tight. Nervous or thoughtful? Hard to tell. Silas Nar drummed his fingers on the table, while Amara Zen maintained an unreadable stare. Eventually, Belina cleared her throat. "We would like to examine documents supporting these claims. If you can provide evidence of diminishing Lannister resources, that would weigh heavily in our considerations." Tyrion nodded. "We anticipated as much. We have brought certain ledgers, annotated by reliable sources in the Westerlands. We will present them to you for review." Qoran Mar stepped forth as if from nowhere, bowing. "If you would leave these documents with me, I shall see that the directors receive them promptly." Tyrion handed over a leather-bound folio, carefully sealed. "We only ask that you keep these confidential until our negotiation is resolved." Belina Fasro stood. "The Iron Bank values discretion above all else. You may be assured of our silence. We will review your proposal and these documents. Please, stay in Braavos as our guests. Once we have reached a decision, we will summon you back here to finalize matters." Nanchanar. Daenerys gave a polite smile, though every fiber in her being wanted to push further, to insist on immediate access to the vaults. But she remembered Tyrion's counsel. Patience would play better here than force. They bowed and departed, guided by Qoran Mar to a comfortable guest residence near the heart of Braavos financial district. A faint drizzle fell that evening, turning the city's cobblestones slick and reflecting myriad lanterns in each puddle. Daenerys stood on a balcony overlooking the canal, hearing the laughter of distant revelers in a tavern and the echo of boat poles pushing through dark water. She could almost forget why she was there, lulled by Braavos' beguiling charm. Yet she could not forget the edges of her plan like teeth in the dark. If the negotiations dragged on and the bank seemed hesitant, she would have to apply pressure. Time was precious, and the Lannisters were no doubt maneuvering even now. Tyrion joined her at the balcony, his cloak drawn tight against the damp night air. "They'll spend at least a day or two reviewing our documents," he said quietly, "perhaps verifying our claims with their own sources. We must be ready for their decision, favorable or otherwise." She looked at him, her voice a murmur over the soft plink of rain. "If they refuse me, we must move swiftly. I will not be turned away by quills and ink." His eyes flicked to the silhouette of the Iron Bank's spires in the distance. "We'll need to ensure the infiltration team is ready. We can't simply barge in. It won't work. But if we can gain entry on the pretense of further negotiations, we could then guide a small strike force to secure the vaults." Nyan. Daenerys gripped the railing. She wanted to believe that it wouldn't come to that the directors would see reason and align with her. But she knew better than to rely on the goodwill of bankers. Gold was their language, and they would always side with the highest bidder unless fear intervened. "We'll be ready," she said. The next day was a waiting game. Missandei visited markets to glean local sentiment, accompanied by Grey Worm for protection. Tyrion remained at the guest residence, pacing and sampling Braavosi brandies. Daenerys spent hours in introspection, occasionally venturing out in a hooded cloak to glimpse the city's bustling life firsthand. She saw street performers dancing in squares, fishmongers hawking their catches in the early morning, courtesans singing ballads near the famed moonpool. Braavos was a city of illusions and dreams, built on the twin pillars of freedom and wealth. She admired it, recalling how she had once built something similar in Meereen, an attempt at a freer society rising from the ashes. She wondered, if given time and the right allies, she could craft a new Westeros that borrowed from these ideals. Late in the afternoon, a messenger came from the Iron Bank with an invitation to return for further discussions. Daenerys' pulse quickened. This was either the moment they aligned with her, or the moment they refused. Within the hour, she, Tyrion, and Missandei were on a small gondola-like boat, gliding through the canals toward the looming edifice. Grey Worm brought 6 Unsullied for a ceremonial guard. Discreet, but present. They arrived at dusk, the marble atrium lit by tall sconces. Inside the director's chamber, Belina Fassero and Amara Zen waited alone, their expressions grave. Silos Nar was absent. Daenerys' mind raced. Had something happened? Belina motioned to them. "Please be seated. We have reviewed your documents and found them enlightening. We have also consulted with certain Braavosi informants who confirm there is truth to your claims about the Lannisters' dwindling gold reserve." Amara Zen leaned forward, her clasped hands resting on the table. "However, we cannot ignore the risk inherent in supporting a queen who thus far has relied on conquests in Essos. The stability of Westeros is vital to our interests. The question remains, can you guarantee that you will secure the Iron Throne and repay the bank with suitable interest, without plunging the continent into prolonged war?" Tyrion's eyes sparkled. Prolonged war is exactly what Queen Daenerys seeks to avoid. A direct assault on King's Landing would cost countless lives, something she wishes to prevent. If she can cut off the Lannisters' financial support, the city might surrender with minimal bloodshed. Now Wenjanu. Belina and Amara exchanged a long look. Then Belina produced a sealed parchment. The Iron Bank has a contract, one that outlines terms more favorable than what the Lannisters currently offer. Should you sign and abide by these terms, we are prepared to consider extending you a line of credit that would enable you to dethrone your rivals. In exchange, we require a guarantee that Braavosi interests will remain protected in any new regime, including certain trade privileges and legal immunities. A small, triumphant smile curved on Tyrion's lips. Daenerys felt a surge of relief, though she kept her face poised. This was the chance to cripple the Lannisters by turning their greatest asset against them. She stepped forward. "I am prepared to offer Braavos and the Iron Bank my word that your investments will be safe, your trade welcomed, and your city respected." Amara Zen's lips pressed into a thin line. "We will hold you to that, Your Grace. There is one more condition." She paused, letting the tension build. "We must know that your dragons pose no threat to Braavos or its shipping. Reports have reached us that your dragons are large and grow larger each day. We cannot have them terrorizing the narrow sea." Daenerys inclined her head. "My dragons serve to protect my people, not to threaten innocent cities. I give you my oath that Braavos shall never be burned by my children so long as you do not bear arms against me or my allies." A quiet moment passed. Then Belina placed the parchment on the table, sliding it toward Daenerys. "Very well. If you would sign, we shall consider the arrangement sealed." Daenerys took the quill Tyrion offered, and with a steady hand, wrote her name in flowing Valyrian script. She felt a spark of destiny in that moment. Missandei smiled, and Tyrion let out a barely audible sigh of relief. Amara Zen sealed the contract with a stamp in red wax. "Then, it is done. The Iron Bank shall provide you with the gold you need. We will also withhold any further loans to the Lannisters. In time, we will recall outstanding debts. We do not foresee them holding the throne for long without our backing." "Nah." Daenerys forced herself to remain calm, though inside she felt something akin to triumph blazing. She could already imagine Cersei's reaction when she discovered the gold flow cut off. She pictured the lines of worry etched deeper into that proud face. "You have chosen wisely," Daenerys said. "When I ascend the throne, Braavos will be remembered as the ally who helped restore peace. Belina smiled slightly, though it was a cautious smile. She and Amara seemed relieved as well. Perhaps they feared a confrontation with the dragons as much as Daenerys had suspected. "We must prepare the transfer of gold," Belina said, rising from her chair. "In the morning, you may visit the vault to take measure of your initial allotment. Coran Mar will guide you." Tyrion bowed graciously, as did Missandei. Daenerys mirrored their gesture, and they left the chamber with a sense of exhilaration that pulsed through every step. She had effectively starved the Lannisters of the Iron Bank's support. True, the Lannisters might still have some reserves, but losing the backing of Braavos was a massive blow. Even more importantly, Daenerys herself would have a stream of gold to pay soldiers, buy supplies, and outmaneuver her enemies. Outside, the night air felt cool and bright on her skin. The Braavosi moon glimmered on the canal's surface, and as they boarded their small boat to return to the guest residence, Daenerys allowed herself a rare moment of joy. Tyrion exhaled a long breath once more. "That went better than I dared hope." Missandei nodded. "Their caution is understandable, but the evidence you gave them was too strong to deny. The Lannisters' facade of wealth is a thin veil, now the bank knows it." Daenerys gazed at the city's glimmering reflections. "Tomorrow, we see the vault. I want to ensure we have a clear understanding of our new resources." They returned to find Grey Worm standing vigilant with the other, unsullied. Daenerys gave him a nod, silently communicating their success. Yet a small part her still braced for betrayal or sudden violence. Braavos was not known for its generosity alone. But at least for now, they had a signed contract that legally bound the bank to her cause. The next morning dawned bright and clear. The drizzle gone. Daenerys rose early, determined to meet Coran Mar as promised. Tyrion accompanied her, still enthralled by the idea of seeing the famed Braavosi vault with his own eyes. Missandei went along to act as translator if needed, though most of the Braavosi they encountered spoke the common tongue well enough. They arrived at the Iron Bank's imposing entrance once more, but this time, the atmosphere felt different. The clerks and guards bowed with newfound respect. They were escorted down a series of corridors and spiral staircases lit by flickering torches. Eventually, they reached a pair of massive steel doors. Coran Mar produced a ring of keys, each shaped differently, and unlocked the doors in a methodical process. The metal groaned as the doors swung open, revealing a chamber that glowed with the light of large candelabras and reflected off a staggering array of gold bars, chests filled with coins, and rows of ledgers. Tyrion's eyes gleamed. Missandei inhaled softly, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it all. Even Daenerys, who had seen her share of treasures in conquered cities, felt a flutter in her stomach. This was more gold than she had imagined, and it was now pledged to her cause. Coran Mar's voice was measured, but a hint of pride slipped through. "Behold a fraction of the Iron Bank's reserves. The directors have allocated a portion to you, as agreed, in stages. Once the contract has borne fruit, and you have shown progress in securing the throne, the next portion will be released. Everything will be documented carefully, with interest schedules and repayment terms spelled out." "Mon." Daenerys ran a hand along the edge of a gold bar, feeling the cold metal beneath her fingertips. It was astounding to think that so many lives could be changed by these ingots, that entire wars could pivot on a single chest of coins. She turned to Coran Mar. "I understand. I will ensure the bank sees a return on its investment." Majoror. Tyrion, who had been quietly surveying the immense stash, spoke in a hushed tone. "With this, your grace, you could hire the Golden Company twice over, supply your armies, provision Dragonstone, and still have enough left to feed the people of the Crownlands once they bend the knee." Daenerys nodded thoughtfully. "And that is exactly what we will do. Feed and protect the people. Not just muster armies for the sake of conquest. I will be a different ruler than what they have known." Coran Mar gave a polite bow. "We will prepare the first shipment to your ships this afternoon. Should you require it, the bank can also facilitate certain trade deals with other free cities that remain friendly to Braavos. Anything to expedite the process of stabilizing Westeros." She thanked him, then turned to Tyrion and Missandei. "Let us inspect the chests. We should see if there are other valuables, gems or letters of credit, that might be more convenient to transport. They spent the next hour reviewing meticulously documented inventories, selecting the forms of wealth easiest to move across the narrow sea. Tyrion occasionally posed questions about interest rates, shipping arrangements, and security. Corin Mar answered promptly, guiding them through the complexities of the Iron Bank's procedures. By midday, the initial transaction was complete. Daenerys stepped back out into the bright Braavosi sunlight, feeling a mixture of triumph and cautious optimism. Her plan had worked. She had, in essence, seized the financial engine behind the Lannisters, though not by violence. The Iron Bank had chosen her over them. It was the subtlety of Tyrion's approach that had allowed this. Yet the next steps were crucial. If she failed to quickly capitalize on this advantage, the Lannisters might recover or turn to other sources. She had to press forward, using this gold strategically. They boarded their ships at the docks, accompanied by carts laden with chests of Braavosi gold. Daenerys watched as Unsullied carefully loaded the precious cargo. She could not help but smile at the curious onlookers. Braavosi fishermen, street urchins, and merchants pausing in their tasks to witness the Targaryen queen departing with a fortune that could sway the fate of nations. As the sailors stowed the chests in the hold, Daenerys stood at the quarterdeck, letting the gentle roll of the waters soothe her. Tyrion joined her, the corners of his mouth quirking in a satisfied grin. "Well, Your Grace, you have effectively deprived my family of their greatest lifeline." She glanced down at him, noting the flicker of mixed emotions in his eyes. He was a Lannister by blood after all, and the downfall of his house might weigh on him in unspoken ways. "I do not relish seeing them starve," she said quietly. "But they have sown this themselves over years of corruption and cruelty." He nodded, sober now. "Indeed they have. Cersei has had ample time to change her ways, but she has grown only more ruthless. She will lash out, be sure of that. I expect her to attempt to seize gold from other corners of Westeros. Highgarden was once wealthy, but House Tyrell was ruined ironically by the Lannisters themselves. They have fewer targets than they used to." Daenerys brushed aside a stray tendril of hair. The midday sun was bright, reflecting off the canal waters in dazzling shards of light. "She will lash out, but we will be prepared. The next step is to ensure that King's Landing's gates cannot be closed to me. I want to offer them a chance to surrender without the city suffering." Tyrion sighed. "Noble. Yet the Lannisters may refuse. Cersei in particular will never yield the throne willingly. She would set the city ablaze before letting it fall to you." A wave of sadness passed through Daenerys. "Then we must find another way. I refuse to be the Queen of Ashes." Back at the guest residence, they found Varys waiting. He had gleaned new information. The Faceless Men were aware of Daenerys' arrival and had shown interest in the negotiations. However, no direct threat was reported. "They may be watching," Varys said, flicking his spider-like fingers. "But they will not act against someone the Iron Bank has chosen to support, at least not yet. The Faceless Men serve the many-faced god, but they also value Braavos independence. As long as you do not threaten the city, you should be safe." Daenerys inclined her head. Another factor to consider in the labyrinth of Braavosi politics. Yet for now, it seemed she had navigated that web unscathed. By evening, she and her entourage had gathered the gold, secured deals with local merchants, and prepared to set sail for Dragonstone the following morning. That night, in a moment of quiet reflection, Daenerys stepped onto the balcony of the guest residence once more. The Braavosi sky was filled with stars, and the gentle hum of distant celebrations drifted across the canals. She remembered the cities she had once liberated: Astapor, Yunkai, Meereen. She had used strength, cunning, and her dragon's might to break the shackles of countless slaves. Now she had used negotiation and the promise of a better future to take the Iron Bank away from the Lannisters. A victory, yes, but a victory that left a curious taste in her mouth. Less fiery, more subtle. Perhaps this was the shape of victories to come in Westeros. If so, she hoped it would spare lives that might otherwise be lost in battle. As she looked at the Titan's dark silhouette in the distance, she thought of the steps ahead. Gold would flow into her war effort. Soldiers would be paid. Alliances would solidify. and the people who truly needed help might finally see relief. It was a path that promised to undermine Cersei's power at its core. And if the Lannisters had no gold, they could not sustain their hold on the throne. It was as simple and as complicated as that. In the morning, they set sail. The Iron Bank's couriers came to see them off, ensuring that the final documentation was in order. Daenerys thanked them for their cooperation, though she did not miss the wary glances they cast at her dragons, which circled overhead in the pale sky, mindful of their mother's movements. The Braavosi parted on polite terms, wishing her a safe journey. Daenerys could not be certain if they were truly content with their arrangement, or simply eager to see her leave without incident. As her ships glided away from the docks, passing once more beneath the colossal Titan, Daenerys felt a swell of confidence. She had done something no one else had dared. Seized the power of the Iron Bank, not by open theft but by persuasion and contract. She had turned the tide without a single drop of blood spilled. The roar of the waves and the snapping of sails in the wind filled her ears. She glanced back at Braavos, receding into the distance, a grand city that had for a moment bent to her will. When they reached open waters, Drogon soared overhead, casting a vast shadow across the deck. Daenerys lifted her face to him, remembering the small, frail creatures her dragons had once been. Now they ruled the skies, unstoppable and fearsome. She hoped to channel that growth in her own leadership. It was time to sail back to Dragonstone with the spoils of this new alliance, and prepare for the final moves against the Lannisters. Standing at the prow, the wind in her hair, Daenerys surveyed the shimmering sea before them. She pictured King's Landing beyond that horizon. She imagined the Red Keep trembling under the weight of a bankrupt crown. The Lannister banners would still fly, but with no gold to feed or arm their army, they would fall in due course. Perhaps she might spare them if they surrendered, but she knew Cersei better than that. Surrender would be a bitter poison to the proud lioness. Grey Worm came to her side, silent and steady. She placed a hand on his armored shoulder. He had fought tirelessly to see her vision realized, from the scorching deserts of Essos to the storms of Dragonstone. "Soon," she said, her voice firm, "we end the Lannisters' stranglehold on the Iron Throne. We free the realm from the cycle of violence and greed." He nodded. "The Unsullied will follow you anywhere, my queen." She offered him a small, grateful smile. Tyrion and Missandei stood nearby, discussing the logistics of distributing the gold. Each chest would be guarded, each coin accounted for, ensuring none went astray. The scale of it was daunting, but also exhilarating. For the first time, Daenerys felt she had the tangible means to remake the Seven Kingdoms as she had always envisioned. A realm not mired in the debts of false kings. A realm that served the many instead of the few. As the sails caught a brisk wind, the ships cut through the sea with renewed vigor, leaving Braavos behind. The city shrank on the horizon, a reminder of how swiftly fortune could shift. With one bold stroke, Daenerys had upended centuries of tradition, proving that even the mighty Iron Bank was not beyond her grasp if she played her cards well. She wondered how the realm would speak of this day in years to come. Would they call her a cunning negotiator, or a thief in a dress of dragon scales? Perhaps both. History was rarely kind or simple, but as she stood there, the salt spray on her cheeks, she felt something else. A sense that this was only the beginning of a long and perilous journey. The gold would help, but it would not solve every problem. She would still need to unite the realm, bring the lords to heel, and most daunting of all, confront the looming threat of White Walkers in the north, a horror that gold alone would not vanquish. There were battles yet to fight, alliances yet to forge. The war for the Iron Throne was not over, merely transformed. Still, for this moment, Daenerys allowed herself a measure of satisfaction. She had, in essence, bankrupted the Lannisters by cutting them off from the Iron Bank's limitless coffers. They would scramble now, desperate to raise funds from new sources. Perhaps they would extort the small folk or attempt to seize wealth from other houses. But each scheme would alienate them further, driving more lords to her banner. She clutched the railing as the ship dipped over a cresting wave. Dragonstone awaited them, a fortress perched on ancient Targaryen rock. From there, She would plan her next move, secure in the knowledge that the Lannisters' days were numbered. Her dragons shrieked in the distance, the call mingling with the roar of the sea. The sound sent a thrill through her veins, a promise of the future she was forging. On deck, she saw Tyrion gazing out at the same horizon. Their eyes met. She inclined her head, acknowledging the part he had played. Without his cunning, this victory might not have been won so cleanly. He responded with a nod and a thin smile, as if to say, "This is only one move on the board, but a decisive one." Night fell gradually as the voyage continued. Stars emerged like shards of diamond scattered across the sky. Daenerys stood at the bow for a long time, feeling the rhythmic sway beneath her feet. Each breath of cool salt air reminded her of the cost of her quest and the hope she still clung to. For better or worse, she was now a queen with the means to challenge the mightiest house in Westeros. The next days and weeks would determine if her bold gamble would indeed topple the lions once and for all, or if, in the labyrinth of power, the Lannisters had one more trick hidden up their crimson sleeves. But for now, she closed her eyes, letting the wind caress her face. One step at a time, she told herself. One victory at a time. She had seized the Iron Bank from the Lannisters, a feat that would echo across the narrow sea. And as the ships plowed ever onward, she felt in her bones that a new chapter of Westeros history was about to unfold. A chapter written not in the old ink of lion's gold, but in the flame and blood of dragons awakened at last. Daenerys felt the sea's lullaby ease her into a restless doze, the rocking of the ship under a velvet sky, a constant reminder of her forward momentum toward Dragonstone. She dreamed fitfully of storm-gray skies above King's Landing, of dragons shrieking amid pillars of ash, of a throne made of swords that loomed impossibly large. In the dream, she reached out to seize it, but an uncountable number of hands, pale and cold, seized her wrists and held her back. She startled awake just before dawn, her heart hammering in her chest. Morning spilled across the deck in streaks of pale gold. Daenerys wrapped her cloak around her shoulders, stepping past sleeping sailors curled in corners. The sails rustled overhead in a gentle breeze. A hush had fallen across the ship, broken only by the creak of timbers and the rhythmic lapping of waves. Tyrion, seemingly ever restless, stood at the bow, gazing out into a horizon tinted pink by the sunrise. She joined him, planting her hands on the rail. The wind was brisk, carrying the salt tang that reminded her of the watery expanse between her and her enemies. Beneath her bare fingertips, the wood felt rough and honest, unlike the polished surfaces of so many thrones she had encountered. She tried to banish the remnants of her dream. This was no time for worry. She had just accomplished something no other Westerosi ruler had managed, severing the Lannisters' lifeblood of gold. Tyrion broke the silence first, keeping his voice low so as not to wake any of the crew. "We'll reach Dragonstone by midday. The men have rowed through the night with the tide, eager to deliver our new cargo." She nodded. "I never asked you if it pains you, this betrayal of your family." His brow furrowed, and for a moment he was quiet. "The Lannisters, as I knew them, are gone. Jaime was once different, but my father's cruelty shaped us all. And Cersei, she's long past any path I could call redemption. I stand with you because I believe in a better future. Though I won't deny, it weighs on me at times." Nesnorandaden. She listened, understanding the push and pull of his divided loyalties. In a sense, she too had been shaped by a father's legacy, though hers was far more infamous. "I appreciate your candor," she said. "Your insight into the Lannisters will continue to be invaluable. They'll be scrambling now. I want to know their next move before they make it." He gave her a thin smile. "If I were in Cersei's place, I'd try to seize alternative funds. She can't conjure gold out of thin air, so she'll turn to what the crown can still control. Taxes on merchants, tariffs on trade passing through King's Landing, perhaps even forced loans from wealthy lords. But that will only buy her time." Daenerys brushed back a strand of wind-blown hair, recalling how taxed the people of Westeros already were by wars and poor harvests. "That might be her undoing," she said. "If she squeezes the noble houses too tightly, more of them might side with me. A brief glint of hope lit Tyrion's gaze. Precisely. We must move carefully, though. If she rallies the fear of her subjects against a supposed foreign invader with dragons, she might stir panic. She'll paint us as an unstoppable threat in the minds of the small folk. Fear can be a powerful tool. Boo! Daenerys felt a pang of regret, recalling how many in King's Landing had once cheered for her father before turning on him when Robert's rebellion swept through. The small folk's loyalty was fickle, governed by survival. We'll show them we're not what Cersei claims. But yes, fear is our double-edged sword. If they see Drogon overhead, they might cling to the false safety she offers. Tyrion rested his forearms on the railing, eyes drifting to the glimmering waves. She'll try to secure Euron Greyjoy's fleet again, or any mercenaries willing to join her cause. Yet with no fresh coin, her promises might ring hollow. That's our advantage. Daenerys fell silent, listening to the water swirl against the hull. Despite her resolve, a small seed of unease wormed its way into her thoughts. The months ahead would test every bit of cunning and compassion she had. Taking gold was one thing. Ensuring it led to a stable realm was another. She banished the worry, focusing instead on the glimmer of sun on the horizon where Dragonstone would soon appear. By midday, the jagged silhouette of Dragonstone rose before them, dark spires piercing the sky. The ship's crew stirred with a cautious excitement, and Daenerys observed the flurry of activity on the docks. Soldiers scurried to positions, banners snapped in the brisk wind, and the robed figure of Varys stood waiting at the quay, arms folded within voluminous sleeves. As soon as the ship was secured, Daenerys descended the gangplank. Missandei and Grey Worm flanked her, while Tyrion and a small contingent of Unsullied supervised the unloading of the gold-laden crates. Varys approached with a measured bow, the midday sun gleaming off his shaved head. "Your Grace, welcome home. I trust your negotiations in Braavos went smoothly." She gestured to the carts being rolled off the ship, each laden with chests stamped with the mark of the Iron Bank. "More smoothly than we could have hoped. The bank has agreed to fund our cause. The Lannisters will struggle to finance their war efforts." Varys' face revealed no shock, but Daenerys knew him well enough to see the flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Remarkable. Cersei will be reeling from that blow. Already there are rumors that the Crown's next set of taxes will be double what they were last year. The small folk can hardly bear it." Daenerys' jaw set. "They should not have to. We'll ease their burdens once I take the throne. Varys inclined his head. "Your generosity might win the hearts of many who have begun to doubt the Lion's rule. Even some of the more pragmatic lords might reconsider their allegiances." She gave him a firm nod. "We'll discuss next steps in the council chamber." Then she turned to watch the Unsullied meticulously handle the gold. As her men wheeled it up the winding path to Dragonstone's fortress, she felt the weight of responsibility descend anew. This was not merely treasure, it was a tool to shape the future of the realm. A short while later, in the echoing hall where the great table carved into Westeros shape sat, Daenerys convened her closest advisors. The walls flickered with torchlight, revealing the carved ridges of mountains and valleys on the massive map. Tyrion, Varys, Missandei, and Grey Worm formed a small semicircle around her. The day's sun cast diagonal stripes of light across the chamber floor. Daenerys spoke first, letting her voice carry across the ancient stone. "We are on the cusp of something significant. Cersei will feel the sting of losing the bank's favor. That means we must move swiftly to capitalize on her weakness. Tyrion, what do you propose?" He stepped forward, arms clasped behind his back. "We have enough gold now to fund a substantial army and support the lords who might join us. One approach is to send envoys to key houses, offering them financial backing or relief if they side with us. For instance, the smaller houses in the Crown lands are desperate for protection from Cersei's taxes." Varys nodded, his voice soft. "House Rosby, House Hayford, even some lesser branches of House Gaunt might be swayed. Their lands encircle King's Landing. If they shift allegiance, the city would be isolated." Daenerys scanned the carved map, her fingertips trailing over the region near the capital. "We could encircle the city without subjecting it to siege, if enough houses declare for us." We'd avoid open conflict until we're sure of success. But we must also be wary of Euron Greyjoy. He still controls a formidable fleet. Tyrion pursed his lips. With Cersei short on funds, hiring cell sails in large numbers might be challenging, but Euron is unpredictable. He might ally with her for plunder alone, or in hopes of marrying her for claim to the throne. We should keep a portion of our fleet ready to repel any sea raids. Grey Worm's expression was resolute. The Unsullied are prepared to defend Dragonstone at all costs. But if we march on King's Landing directly, we risk the city's small folk suffering in the crossfire. Daenerys felt the burn of old memories. Cities in Essos, torn by chaos, the pain of innocence caught between armies. I promised myself I would not become the Queen of Ashes. Let us starve the lion by legitimate means first. Now, they deliberated the next steps. Letters would be sent to wavering lords, gilded with the promise of immediate relief from the burden of crown taxes, gold to improve roads, to fortify their towns. Tyrion would emphasize how Daenerys' rule meant a fresh start, an end to the crippling demands that had bled the countryside. In the meantime, the Unsullied would bolster their presence around Dragonstone, preparing for any naval skirmish. Varys would deploy his network of whisperers throughout the Crown Lands, ensuring they knew when or if Cersei attempted to raise coin from alternative methods. When the council concluded, Daenerys lingered by the carved table, staring down at the depiction of King's Landing. Her heart pounded with anticipation. She could almost envision marching into the city, hearing the gates open at her approach, feeling the ground tremble beneath her dragons. Yet she pushed back her desire to simply seize the capital by force. Time and patience, she reminded herself. Victory untainted by needless slaughter. That night, a banquet of sorts was prepared. The main hall of Dragonstone had rarely known celebration in recent memory. The chamber's high, vaulted ceiling was hung with fading Targaryen banners. The smell of roasted lamb and seasoned fish drifted among the gathered soldiers and advisors. Daenerys herself ate sparingly, more intent on discussing strategy with Tyrion and Missandei than indulging in wine. A hush fell whenever she passed, a mixture of respect and awe that she tried to acknowledge with a gentle nod or a slight smile. Midway through the meal, a messenger arrived from the mainland, clothes splattered with mud, face drawn with exhaustion. He bowed low before Daenerys, then produced a sealed letter. "From Lord Rendell Tarley's household, Your Grace," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Tyrion took the letter, a frown darkening his features as he broke the seal. He read quickly. "It appears Lord Tarley has reservations about siding with Cersei further. He writes that the crown's demands have become unreasonable, conscripting his grain stores without fair compensation. He seeks an audience with you, Your Grace, in secret, to discuss terms." "Then, Monsieur?" Daenerys arched an eyebrow. Lord Tarley had once pledged his loyalty to House Tyrell before switching to the crown's side, but his pride and sense of honor were well known. "He is not a man to treat lightly," she said. "But if he's willing to approach us, it means Cersei's demands have pushed him too far." Tyrion sighed, placing the letter on the table. "He's also the type of lord who values strength and leadership. If we can prove we're the stronger side, he might pledge his banners. That would be significant. He has a notable military reputation." "Mr. Martin," she nodded. "Arrange the meeting. Secure a safe location. We can't risk him being discovered by Cersei's agents, nor do I want to do a trap." With that, the messenger was given food and rest, while the mood in the hall shifted. Whispers of Tarley's potential defection spread. Daenerys felt a spark of hope. If men like Randyll Tarley were questioning the crown, it meant the Lannisters' foundation was truly cracking. That same night, she wandered the dark corridors of Dragonstone, torches sputtering in the gloom, lost in thought. The echo of her footsteps against the ancient stone seemed to carry 1,000 years of Targaryen history. She heard a faint roaring sound in the distance. Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion roosting outside, occasionally lifting their voices to the night wind. She let their distant calls steady her, a reminder that she was not just another claimant to the throne, but the mother of dragons. Despite her earlier fatigue, sleep did not come easily. She lay in her chamber, listening to the sea smash against the rocks, feeling the cold draft that seeped through the tower walls. She thought of the gold in the vault below, the power it promised, the dangerous temptations it might bring. She reminded herself that the gold was a means to an end, a stable, prosperous realm. If she forgot that, she risked becoming another tyrant with pockets lined by the Iron Bank. She shut her eyes, silently vowing never to let that happen. Dawn arrived in a swirl of thick gray clouds. The ocean moaned with the promise of a coming storm, and gusts of wind rattled the shutters. Daenerys dressed in sturdy leathers and a heavy cloak, anticipating a journey inland. According to the plan Tyrion had set up late into the night, she would meet Randyll Tarly on a stretch of neutral ground by the Wendwater River, a day's ride from the capital. She chose to take a small retinue: Grey Worm, Missandei, Tyrion, and a handful of Dothraki riders, men who were adept at moving quietly despite their famed savagery. They departed Dragonstone by ship, crossing the choppy waters to a secluded bay near Massey's Hook. The Dothraki horses had been stabled on the vessel's lower deck, uneasy but well tended. The crossing was short, yet fraught with unpredictable waves. Daenerys stood on the deck, frowning at the leaden sky, trying to read the mood of the ocean. A smattering of rain pelted her cheeks, cold as shards of ice. By midday, they made landfall. Her group disembarked swiftly, the horses snorting as they touched firm ground. The Dothraki riders fanned out, scanning the tree line for any sign of ambush. Wind rustled the dense pines, a mournful sound that kept everyone on edge. Tyrion adjusted the hood of his cloak, blinking against the drizzle. They set off at a steady pace, following a half-hidden trail that led inland. Daenerys felt oddly at peace despite the murkiness of the weather. The forest floor was spongy with leaves, and the air smelled of damp earth. She could sense the watchful eyes of wildlife in the undergrowth. More than once, she thought she spotted shadows flitting among the trees, but it might have been the swirl of her cloak or the illusions cast by the rain. Eventually, they reached a clearing near the Wendwater. The river surged with recent rains, its waters dark and swift. A small, dilapidated wooden bridge spanned it, the boards creaking ominously under the weight of the horses. On the other side, under the canopy of a great oak, stood Lord Randyll Tarly. He was flanked by half a dozen bannermen, each wearing the Tarly sigil of the striding huntsman. As Daenerys' group approached, Tarly stood stiff and austere, his features set in a grim line. She dismounted gracefully, pulling back her hood. Grey Worm and the Dothraki remained alert, hands near weapons, but not drawing them. Tarly's men wore similar expressions of wary tension. Rain dripped from the oak's branches, forming small puddles in the grass. Tarly inclined his head, though he did not kneel. "Daenerys Targaryen, I've heard rumors of your conquests in Essos and your negotiations with the Iron Bank." She studied his face. He was broad-shouldered, clad in practical armor, and his keen eyes betrayed a mind always considering tactics. "You've heard true. The bank stands with me now." Tarly's gaze shifted to Tyrion, then back to her. "I served Olenna Tyrell until she chose to oppose the crown. Then I bent the knee to Queen Cersei, who rewarded me with command. I do not take oaths lightly." Daenerys suppressed the urge to remind him that he had broken one oath already to join Cersei. She needed him, or at least his men. "Nor do I take them lightly. Why ask for this meeting if you are steadfast in your loyalty to the crown?" His jaw tightened. "Because the crown demands more than my lands can bear. Grain shipments, gold I do not have, threats of retribution if I fail. My men are hungry, my small folk poorer each day. This is not how a ruler should treat those who serve. I told Queen Cersei as much. She brushed me aside." Daenerys nodded, the drizzle seeping into her hair. She saw an opening. "I do not intend to drive my supporters to ruin. I want a realm that prospers. I want lords who keep their people fed, who maintain peace. Bend the knee to me, and you will be granted fair terms. Your lands will see investment, not ruin." Tarly crossed his arms as if bracing himself. "They call you the Mother of Dragons. Some say you have no mercy for those who oppose you. Others say you're a liberator. Which should I believe?" Tyrion spoke quietly, stepping forward. She has liberated thousands from slavery in Essos. She has offered fair treatment to those who surrender, though she will defend herself against those who insist on aggression. You are a soldier, Lord Tarly, a general who values discipline. You can appreciate the difference between mercy and weakness. Tarly's gaze flickered, and at length he sighed. My men will not fight for a queen they do not trust. Yet they will starve under one who does not care. I heard rumors of your gold from Bravos, how you plan to use it to feed the realm. If you can show me that your word is true, that you will not punish us for having once followed the crown, then I am inclined to ally with you. Daenerys felt the tension ease slightly. I hold no grudge against men who acted under orders. What I wanted is to end Cersei's reign without needless bloodshed. He studied her as the rain pattered on armor and cloaks, the water running down the braided silver of her hair. Then he knelt, albeit stiffly, lowering his head. Then you have my sword, Daenerys Targaryen. I swear it. My banners will follow you, provided you keep your promise to treat my people with justice. She stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. The leather of her glove slick with rain. Rise, Lord Tarly. I accept your vow, and you shall have my protection. He rose, expression still grim, but there was a certain acceptance in his eyes. There is much to do. Cersei will not take this betrayal lightly. She will label me a traitor. We must be prepared. Nay, no. She nodded, waving Tyrion closer. We have logistics to discuss. Return to your holdfast and gather your troops. We will coordinate from Dragonstone, using ravens that I will send to you. Tarly inclined his head in agreement. I know these lands well. If you plan to move on King's Landing, you will need men who can navigate the Crown Lands. My huntsmen know every path, every hidden ravine. Daenerys offered a small smile. Then we shall rely on your expertise. With that, the brief parley ended. Tarly and his men departed, melting into the rain-shrouded woods. Daenerys watched them go, pondering the fact that she had just gained a formidable ally without drawing steel. It seemed that the gold she had wrested from the Iron Bank was already bearing fruit. They mounted their horses again, turning back toward the hidden cove where their ship waited. Grey Worm flanked her, his spear upright. Tyrion rode alongside them, the hood of his cloak dripping. That went well, Tyrion remarked, voice tight with relief. I expected more hostility. Daenerys steered her horse around a fallen branch. He's a proud man, but pride means little if his people starve. Cersei forgets that. Missandei shivered under her cloak, breath misting in the cold. Every day the realm suffers under Cersei's greed is another day more lords might consider turning to you. The gold gives you not just military advantage, but moral high ground if you use it wisely. Daenerys nodded, pressing her lips together in resolve. We will see to that. I have no desire to hoard my wealth the way the crown has done. We'll distribute food, lighten burdens, reward loyalty. The more support we gather, the less violence we'll face when we finally arrive at the capital's gates. Bah! The rain intensified, sheets of water glinting in the waning daylight. Their horses squelched through mud, and the Dothraki kept careful watch. More than once Daenerys glimpsed shapes moving among the trees, perhaps just deer startled by their passage. Each time, Grey Worm's hand tightened on his spear, but no threat emerged. They reached the ship by nightfall, thoroughly drenched. Sailors helped guide the horses aboard, while the Dothraki spat curses at the raging wind. Daenerys felt the chills seep into her bones, but a fierce satisfaction warmed her from within. If lords like Randyll Tarly could be won over, more would follow. The voyage back to Dragonstone was a trial of battered sails and roaring surf. Daenerys stood at the helm, refusing to cower below deck, though the crew shouted warnings about the violent sea. She gripped the wet railing, determined to trust in the ship's captain. Spray lashed her face, and the deck heaved beneath her feet. Tyrion clung to a post, muttering under his breath, while Missandei looked pale, but resolute. Grey Worm and the Dothraki, less accustomed to the waves, tightened ropes to keep supplies secure. After hours of battling the storm, they spotted the faint lights of Dragonstone through the haze. The captain breathed a sigh of relief, navigating carefully around the submerged rocks that made the approach treacherous. At last, they moored, and Daenerys half expected to kiss the soaked planks of the dock with gratitude for solid ground. Once ashore, she sent the horses to the stables, instructing the men to dry off and rest. Tomorrow they would dispatch ravens to Tarly's holdfast, and from there, plan the subtle net they would cast around King's Landing. She climbed the worn steps into the fortress, cloak dripping a trail behind her, exhaustion weighing her limbs. Yet her mind remained alight with possibilities. In the flickering glow of the hallway torches, she encountered Varys waiting by the council chamber. He raised his eyebrows at her soaked appearance. "I assume the meeting went well, Your Grace." She removed her sodden gloves, wringing out a corner of her cloak. "Better than expected. Randall Tarly is ours. I need you to reach out to our new ally discreetly. We can't have Cersei's spies intercepting our messages." Varys's half-smile was sly. "Of course, I'll ensure every raven is coded, every messenger meticulously chosen." "Good," she said, feeling the weariness claw at her. "Now if you'll excuse me, I must rest." She made her way to her chamber, Missandei following to help with removing the soaked attire. The castle walls seemed to hum with the storm, wind whistling through narrow windows. Missandei warmed a basin of water, draping a thick fur over Daenerys' shoulders. Daenerys sank onto a small bench, letting out a slow breath. "Thank you." Missandei gave her a gentle smile. "Your devotion to your cause is inspiring to all who follow you. I only wish you didn't have to endure so many hardships." Daenerys brushed aside the sentiment. "Better I endure them than my people. If this is the cost, I will pay it 1,000 times." Missandei nodded, quiet admiration shining in her eyes. When Daenerys was settled, Missandei slipped away to let her queen sleep. Alone at last, Daenerys stared at the red glow of embers in the hearth. She was soaked through, shivering slightly, yet her spirit felt ablaze. Lords were bending. The gold was working. She was forging a new shape in the realm, one that Cersei's iron grip could not crush. She let that thought lull her into restless dreams. A new day dawned with calmer skies. The storm had blown itself out, leaving a pale sun shining on wet battlements. Daenerys gathered her advisors once more to discuss the infiltration of King's Landing through persuasion. Tyrion laid out letters addressed to the minor houses and wealthy merchants who were rumored to be in quiet rebellion against Cersei's suffocating taxes. Each letter offered relief in the form of coin to rebuild roads, buy seeds, or pay off debts, on condition they transfer their allegiance to the Dragon Queen. She sealed each letter personally, her signet ring pressing into hot wax. A small gesture, but one she hoped conveyed respect. When the ravens were released, their black wings beat against the gray sky, carrying her promise across the crownlands. Now all they could do was wait. Weeks passed in a tense dance of politics. Replies trickled in. Some lords pledged fealty with timid eagerness. Others requested more time, fearful of Cersei's wrath. A handful demanded further assurances, uncertain whether the Targaryen queen could truly protect them. Meanwhile, the gold from Braavos was distributed carefully. Tyrion oversaw the logistics, ensuring no single lord received too much at once. He was wary of opportunists who might take the gold and still bow to the crown. Varys' whispers moved from hamlet to hamlet, gauging the temperament of the populace. Daenerys divided her days between overseeing this delicate network of negotiations and training with her dragons. Early mornings found her on the wind-blasted cliffs, wearing thick furs, calling Drogon, Regal, and Viserion Turret. She soared with them whenever possible, strengthening the bond that could terrify armies if unleashed. The sensation of gripping Drogon scaled back, feeling his massive wings thunder through the cold air, gave her a thrill that cut through all the politics. When she landed, her cheeks flushed with windburn. The men on the ground gazed with awe. It was a reminder that while gold might undercut the Lannisters, dragons remained a final guarantee that she would not be trifled with. During one such morning, Tyrion waited below as she dismounted from Drogon. The great beast roared, then took off again, circling overhead before disappearing into the clouds. Tyrion cleared his throat, brushing aside some stray pebbles dislodged by the dragon's claws. "Your Grace, I bring news from the Crown Lands. Cersei has begun conscripting gold from septs and septas, seizing valuables from the faith. She's turned her eye to the wealth of the church. It's causing a huge uproar, outraging both commoners and the devout. Daenerys frowned, the wind whipping her hair. She dares to steal from the faith. That will not go unnoticed. He nodded, squinting against the gusts. The High Sparrow might be gone, but the people's faith remains powerful. If she antagonizes the Seven's followers, she risks a serious backlash. This presents an opportunity. We can offer protection for the faith's assets, food or coin if they need it, to further isolate the crown. Her mind whirred with possibilities. Do it carefully. We cannot be seen as interfering with religion for our own gain. But let them know that I will not strip them of their resources. Let them pray in peace. He nodded, a hint of excitement in his eyes. One well-placed act of generosity could sway entire regions. I'll handle the details. Meanwhile, rumors reached Dragonstone about Euron Greyjoy's movements along the coast. He was raiding small fishing villages, capturing ships, trying to line his pockets now that Cersei's well had run dry. Refugees from the coast began seeking sanctuary in ports loyal to Daenerys. With each new ship of frightened villagers, the Targaryen name gained more goodwill. She offered them shelter, grain from her storerooms, and the protection of her unsullied, if needed. Those acts were not only moral but strategic, further whittling away at the false security the Lannisters claimed to provide. One evening, after a day spent receiving refugees, Daenerys climbed the winding steps to Dragonstone's tallest tower. The cold stone walls pressed in as she ascended. She reached the top, stepping out onto a narrow balcony that overlooked the Black Sea. The sun was setting in a riot of orange and pink, the waves reflecting the colors as though a fire burned beneath the water. She leaned against the parapet, letting the wind numb her cheeks. Slowly, footsteps approached behind her. Tyrion emerged, carrying a small flask of spiced wine. He offered it to her with a wry smile. Care for something to chase off the chill. She took a tentative sip, letting the heat spread through her chest. "Thank you. Any news?" His expression turned serious. A raven arrived from a group of merchants in King's Landing. They claim to have the means to smuggle in some supplies if we can guarantee an escort. They're desperate to support us, but fear the gold cloaks might arrest them if caught dealing with traitors. Mendai. She nodded slowly, imagining the labyrinthine streets of the capital. We need a plan to ensure their safety. If they smuggle in supplies, food, medicine, to the poorest districts, the people might realize there is another queen who cares for them. That can sow seeds of loyalty. Tyrion tapped a finger on the balcony's worn stone. I've been thinking about the final step, actually taking King's Landing. We can starve Cersei of resources, but she won't simply step down. She'll barricade herself in the Red Keep. Daenerys stared at the horizon, the sun half submerged now, turning the sky to gold and crimson. She might be desperate enough to threaten the populace. We cannot let her hold them hostage. We need a swift, surgical way to end her reign, ideally without burning half the city. Tyrion was silent for a moment. Then he turned to her. When the day comes, perhaps a small force could infiltrate the city, open the gates from within, or corner Cersei in the keep before she sets wildfires or some other madness in motion. We'd need local allies who know the city's tunnels, the hidden pathways. My knowledge can help, but we'd do best to align with any who secretly oppose her inside the walls. She let out a slow breath. Yes. And while that happens, the bulk of our army, unsullied, Dothraki, Tarly's forces, would stand at the outskirts, ready. If the gates open peacefully, the city might accept our entry without extended fighting. Nizyal. He offered a grim chuckle. That's the ideal scenario. We must also prepare for the worst, though. Cersei is cunning. Darkness fell fully, the stars emerging one by one. Daenerys took another sip from the flask, her mind dancing through countless possibilities. At times, the complexities threatened to overwhelm her. Yet she felt a keen determination pushing her forward. She had come too far. endured too much to shy away now. The following weeks saw more arrivals. Ravens from Storm's End, from lords in the Crown Lands who saw Tarly's defection and wavered themselves, from merchants wanting a piece of the new trade deals she forged with Bravos. The fortress of Dragonstone buzzed with activity, corridors echoing with the voices of envoys. Daenerys presided over them as best she could, forging a patchwork coalition that, one day, might stand as the backbone of her rule. Each success chipped away at Cersei's power. Tyrion's sources reported that the Crown's men were spread thin across the region, chasing rumored rebellions or quelling riots sparked by excessive taxation. The Iron Bank had formally recalled certain lines of credit from King's Landing, prompting a panic among the royal treasurers. Daenerys could almost picture the look on Cersei's face when she realized that her once unshakable alliance with the bank had vanished like mist in morning sun. From time to time, Daenerys allowed herself a moment's reflection. How had she come so far, from a scared girl sold to Khal Drogo, to the orchestrator of a realm-wide strategy that shifted the axis of power? She thought of the gold bars stacked in the undercroft of Dragonstone, a silent testament to her newfound leverage. She remembered the slaves she had freed in Essos, the fiery birth of her dragons, the heartbreak of betrayal and the triumph of liberation. Every step had led her here, to a slow but certain strangling of the Lannister hold on Westeros. When the tide of support reached a critical mass, Daenerys decided the time was ripe for a bolder move. Houses near the capital, Rosby, Stokeworth, and a few smaller banners showed readiness to accept her protection. She would dispatch a small detachment of Unsullied to secure those regions, ensuring food and trade could flow freely to the people there. If the Crown tried to stop them, Daenerys would have just cause to intervene directly. She gathered Grey Worm, Missandei, and Tyrion in the courtyard at dawn. The sky was awash in pale light, the stones glistening from a recent rain. The Unsullied stood in perfect formation, disciplined and silent. Dothraki riders lingered at the periphery, their braids swaying as they muttered quietly in their own tongue. Daenerys addressed Grey Worm. Lead a force of 300 Unsullied to secure Rosby and Stokeworth. Show the lords we come as protectors. Do not engage unless attacked, but be ready for any hostility from Cersei's men. Grey Worm brought a fist to his chest. I will not fail you, my queen. She then turned to Tyrion. Coordinate with the local villagers. Arrange supply shipments, pay them fairly. Ensure they see the difference between our rule and Cersei's. He bowed slightly. The gold is at our disposal. We'll use it to buy loyalty the honest way, by offering security and sustenance, not by intimidation. She nodded, satisfied. Missandei, I want you to accompany them as my voice. If the lords have questions or concerns, your counsel will assure them we mean no harm. Missandei inclined her head. I will do my best to represent you with truth and fairness. With the plan set, the small army departed amid a flurry of activity. Daenerys watched them from the ramparts, the black and red Targaryen sigil snapping in the wind. She trusted Grey Worm's tactical genius and Missandei's gentle diplomacy. If they succeeded, 2 more crucial pieces of land near King's Landing would slip from Cersei's grasp. But perhaps the city's gates would soon be in reach. Alone on the battlements, Daenerys saw Rhaegal circle overhead, letting out a shrill cry. She lifted her gaze, meeting the dragon's green eyes. She extended a hand, though he remained aloft, a silent sentinel. She felt a strange kinship with her dragons, caged by necessity, longing to stretch her wings fully. But for now, her strength lay in measured steps, not in blazing flights of destruction. Night fell quiet over Dragonstone once more, and Daenerys found herself restless. The ocean's relentless murmur haunted the corridors, as did the whiff of salt and seaweed. She lingered in the great hall, pacing along the carved table of Westeros. She traced the coastline near King's Landing, imagining the approach of her forces. If they could capture the hearts of the Crownlands, if they could cut off the capital's last lifelines of support, Cersei might have no choice but to barricade herself inside the Red Keep like a cornered animal. Then Daenerys would give her one final chance to surrender. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft shuffle of footsteps. Varys appeared like a phantom, in the dimly lit hall. He dipped his head politely. "Forgive the intrusion, Your Grace. I bring important tidings." She turned to him, hands clasped behind her back. "What news?" He held out a folded parchment, the seal already broken. "From your infiltration lines near King's Landing. The gold cloaks have begun patrolling the roads more fiercely. Cersei must suspect the Crownlands are slipping away. She's offering bounty for any who claim loyalty to you." Daenerys' jaw tightened. "She seeks to sow fear. But fear can also breed resentment." Varys nodded, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "Yes, and resentment is one thing Cersei does not need more of. However, there's a note here about a band of sellswords, perhaps a remnant of the brave companions, who have been hired to raid villages believed sympathetic to you. We must address that swiftly, or we risk losing local support." Mentingak. D. She took the parchment, scanning it quickly by the light of a guttering candle. "Inform Grey Worm. He must defend those villages. The last thing we need is a wave of atrocities turning people away from me out of terror." Varys bowed. "At once, Your Grace." He drifted away, leaving Daenerys with the note in hand. She stared down at the words, feeling a surge of anger at the cruelty. Cersei had stooped to hiring what amounted to brigands to terrorize her own people. It was a bitter reminder of what lengths the line would go to. But if Cersei believed fear would work, Daenerys intended to prove otherwise by ensuring swift protection for those under her prospective rule. In the weeks that followed, news traveled back and forth like the tide. Grey Worm's Unsullied established outposts near Rosby and Stokeworth, with minimal resistance. Some Crown forces retreated at the sight of disciplined ranks, avoiding direct conflict for fear of open war. Missandei negotiated the purchase of local crops, ensuring fair prices, which endeared the farmers to the Targaryen cause. The sellswords who attempted to raid a village found themselves met by a swift and ruthless Unsullied response, scattering back into the woods with heavy losses. Daenerys could almost sense the net drawing tighter around King's Landing. Whispers reached the capital, telling of a queen who paid for supplies in gold, rather than seizing them by force. Refugees continued to trickle into the areas under Targaryen protection, sharing tales of hunger and brutality within the city's walls. Cersei apparently had begun conscripting men from the poorest districts, sometimes dragging them from their homes. On one particular day, a battered merchant caravan arrived at Rosby, half of them wounded. They claimed to be fleeing the Crown's soldiers, who had taken their goods without payment. The caravan leader, a wiry woman named Hala, brought her account to Missandei, who immediately wrote a letter to Daenerys. Upon receiving it, Daenerys wasted no time. She saddled Drogon for a short, commanding flight across the Crown lands, an unmistakable sign of her presence. She soared above farmland turned brown and wilted from over-harvesting, soared over rivers that glinted in the noon sun. The sight of her dragon in the sky sent peasants racing out of their huts in astonishment. Some waved or knelt, uncertain whether to fear or welcome her. She circled the new Targaryen outpost near Rosby, where the Unsullied had built makeshift fortifications. Then, with deliberate showmanship, she descended into the main courtyard, Drogon's wings flattening tents and stirring clouds of dust. Grey Worm and Missandei hurried forward as Daenerys dismounted. The looks on their faces told her that her dramatic entrance had made an impact. She hadn't done it merely for spectacle. She wanted the people to see her strength with their own eyes. She greeted Missandei first, whose face lit with relief. "Your Grace, the situation is dire. More merchants arrive each day, dispossessed by the Crown's appropriation of their goods. They look to you for salvation." Daenerys. Daenerys glanced around. The courtyard was bustling with refugees and piles of trade goods. Grain sacks, cloth bolts, barrels of salt fish. Children clung to their mothers, eyes wide at the sight of the dragon. "They shall have it," Daenerys said firmly. "Distribute what food we can spare. Let them rest." Grey Worm saluted. "We have medics tending to the wounded, but we need more tents, more supplies. We did not expect so many." Daenerys gestured to the sky, where Drogon flapped restlessly, then took off again in a shower of dust. I return to Dragonstone to bring additional provisions. Meanwhile, I want a message sent to the other lords who support us. If they can contribute food or shelter, we will compensate them. We must show these people we will not abandon them." Later, she walked among the refugees herself, handing out small portions of dried meat from the stores the Unsullied possessed. Tyrion had joined her, wiping sweat from his brow in the relentless sun. He observed quietly, then murmured, "Cersei has forced these people into your hands with her cruelty. Yet feeding them is no small task. Supplies run thin quickly. Now..." Daenerys stooped to offer a piece of bread to a young boy whose ribcage showed through his ragged shirt. He gazed at her with gratitude and a flicker of fear. She managed a comforting smile. When she rose, she spoke to Tyrion softly. "I would rather face hardship feeding them now than see them starve under her rule." He nodded, subdued admiration in his eyes. "Then we must ensure the gold from Braavos continues to flow. We can buy supplies from nearby regions that are not yet devastated. Perhaps the Riverlands, though that would require negotiating safe passage." They continued through the throngs, offering what reassurances they could. More than once, Daenerys had to bite back anger when she heard personal stories of crowned soldiers taking the last of a family's grain, or beating them for daring to resist. The cruelty she had witnessed in Essos echoed here in Westeros. Only this time it was inflicted by the Lannisters, in the name of royal authority. When night came, she and Tyrion convened in the largest tent, where Grey Worm and Missandei awaited. They discussed logistics until the small hours, drawing up plans for more robust supply lines, protective patrols, and possible safe routes for caravans. Daenerys found herself longing for the final confrontation, for the moment she would unseat Cersei and end this torment. But she knew each day of caution spared countless lives. As the weeks stretched on, the effect became undeniable. The crown lands were slipping from Cersei's hands without a formal battle. Deprived of gold and faced with organized defiance, she could only lash out sporadically. More lords defected quietly, and those who remained loyal did so largely out of fear. Daenerys' base of power expanded, a patchwork of alliances bound by the promise of a just ruler who did not bleed them dry. Yet, for all the progress, Daenerys felt the tension escalate. Each day she wondered if Cersei would do something drastic, unleash wildfire, or attempt to kill innocent masses to force the realm to stay in line. More than once she asked Tyrion and Varys to confirm rumors that Cersei had caches of wildfire hidden throughout King's Landing. Tyrion grimly admitted that his father had once stockpiled the substance, and that caches still likely remained, though no one knew exactly where. Eventually, the final piece of the puzzle arrived in the form of an urgent message. The people of Flea Bottom, the poorest district of King's Landing, were on the verge of riot. Food shortages had become so severe that even meager scraps of bread were sold at outrageous prices. Some were rumored to be eating rats or worse. The city watch cracked down, but discontent simmered close to explosion. Daenerys read the message in the Hall of Dragonstone, her eyes dark with anger. She resolved that she would not stand by while innocent people starved under Cersei's iron fist. She summoned her advisors. "This is it," she declared, voice vibrating with conviction. "We have the gold, the alliances, the moral high ground. Let us put an end to this suffering. We will move to surround King's Landing. We will allow the inhabitants to receive our supplies through open gates if they choose. If Cersei resists, she will be the one who dooms her people, not us." Tyrion nodded, though worry etched his features. "We must tread carefully. One spark could set the city ablaze. But I agree, this cannot go on." Grey Worm bowed. "The Unsullied are ready, my queen." Missandei folded her hands at her waist. "And the letters from the lords confirm they are prepared to march behind you, trusting in your cause." Daenerys breathed in deeply, remembering her vow to protect the realm from another tyrant. "Then let us do it. We will take King's Landing not with mindless slaughter, but by offering salvation to those who have none. Cersei will face the consequences of her own cruelty. We stand for the people, and they will see it." Thus the final march began. From Dragonstone and Rosby, from Stokeworth and the surrounding villages, men and women mustered under the Targaryen banner. Caravans of supplies lined the roads. The Dothraki rode ahead, scouting for potential ambushes. The Unsullied marched with their perfect discipline, spears upright, ready for anything. Lords loyal to Daenerys brought their household knights, forging a unified force that advanced across the Crown Lands under a clear sky that seemed almost ominously calm. Daenerys rode at the center, astride a splendid silver mare, though Drogon flew overhead at intervals, a majestic silhouette against the sun. She felt the electrifying energy rippling through her troops. They were not marching as mere conquerors, they were marching as liberators. Whispers of hope spread wherever they went. Villagers lined the roads to glimpse the Mother of Dragons, to wave or to cry out blessings. Some fell to their knees, tears in their eyes, begging for deliverance from Lannister oppression. Within days, they were encamped a few miles from King's Landing, on a broad plain once used for tournaments. The city's walls rose in the near distance, and the Red Keep's towers loomed high. Daenerys gazed upon it, remembering the last time a Targaryen had reigned there. Her father. She fought back a swirl of emotions: anger, sadness, resolve. She would reclaim this seat of power, but not as her father had wielded it. She would be a queen who served, not a tyrant who burned. Scouts returned with news. The gates were closed, the gold cloaks manned the battlements, and Cersei's banners still flew. Tension hung in the air like a drawn bowstring. Daenerys called her council within a large pavilion. Around a table spread with maps, Tyrion pointed out the city's weakest points, while Grey Worm described infiltration tactics. Varys reported that the city's small folk were ready to riot if the slightest opportunity arose. Missandei urged caution, reminding them that the goal was not to spark chaos but to bring an orderly change of power. Eventually, Daenerys rose, addressing them all with quiet intensity. "We will not assault the city blindly. We give them a chance. I will send a final offer. Open the gates. Let the people receive our aid and surrender. If Cersei refuses, then we proceed with a plan that avoids wanton death. We infiltrate the city, secure the key points, and corner the false queen." Tyrion exhaled, relief mingled with concern. A wise approach. But if Cersei orders her men to fight to the last, or threatens to set wildfire ablaze, what then? Daenerys' voice became steely. "Then we protect the people as best we can. We have resources, we have dragons, but I will not back down. The time for half measures is over." Outside, the wind stirred the pavilion flaps, carrying the distant cries of the city. Daenerys felt the weight of all her decisions press upon her. Yet, she did not falter. She had come to Westeros for this moment, after all the struggles in Essos and the cunning maneuver in Braavos. Now, at the threshold of the Lannisters' lair, she would complete what she started. Break their power, free the realm, and sit at last upon the Iron Throne to rule justly, or die trying. Stepping out into the camp, she gazed at the hodgepodge of tents, the endless lines of her soldiers, the flicker of torches as night fell. Overhead, dragons soared on the final breeze of twilight, watchful guardians of her ambition. She closed her eyes for an instant, remembering the vulnerability she once felt as a beggar queen in a foreign land. No longer. Gold had shifted the tide, yes, but it was her will, tempered by compassion, that would see this through. She opened her eyes, looking toward the torchlit walls of King's Landing. Tomorrow or the day after, her banners would fly there. She could almost taste it. The realm would be hers, and the Lannister stranglehold would end. Perhaps bards would sing of how Daenerys Targaryen used more than dragons. She used the cunning of coin, the subtlety of diplomacy, and the strength of unity to bring down a once mighty house. She hoped those songs would remember, too, that she fought for the people, not just for the throne. In the distance, thunder rumbled beyond the horizon, a low promise of storms to come. She accepted the omen with grim determination. One last storm to weather, one final clash against the lion's roar. Then, at last, she would be queen, by the grace of those who believed in her, by the flames of dragons, and by the wealth torn from the heart of the Iron Bank's vault that had once belonged to the Lannisters. With that thought kindling her resolve, Daenerys turned her back on the city walls for the night, ready to shape the dawn that would follow.